from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
The Interior Secretary begins a tour of recent monument designations on the I-80 planting tour.
I'm Betsy Gibbon. After a slow start to the season, planting is picking up in eastern Iowa. We'll have that story ahead on Agday.
And I would say we're just on the back window of a comfortable late right now. I would not call us behind yet, but just on the tail end of where we'd like to be.
In agribusiness, checking on cotton.
But we're already well ahead. We're well past 100% mark of exports.
It's fig harvest season in California, and these kids are reinventing breakfast in Beloit, Wisconsin.
Ag Day, brought to you by the dependable, longest-lasting Chevy Silverado.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. The president has ordered the review of recent national monument designations following the previous administration's use of the Antiquities Act to lock up more than 250 million acres. U.S. Interior Secretary Ryan Zink following through on that order this week, touring America's newest and most hotly contested monuments, including Bears Ears National Monument. The 1.3 million acre designation is just one of nearly 30 now under review.
A lot of that is restoring trust. And restoring trust is about listening, is about working with local communities, and making sure that our public lands are for the public.
The Public Lands Council and the National Cattlemen's Beef Association both applauding the action. They say elevating millions of acres to monument status without local input or economic analysis results in unrecoverable losses to the local communities, also citing recent examples of losses in grazing and logging rights as lands transition to monument status.
It's very important to us. We've been here for a long time, and it's how we make our lives. That's how we feed our children and put a roof over our heads.
They want the land managed in the most profitable way to themselves rather than, for the long-term benefit of everyone in the country.
Of course, ranchers not the only voice. Bears Ears was established by President Obama near the end of his term after a coalition of tribes spent years urging that the area be made a national monument.
I'm actually optimistic. At the end of the day, we'll make a recommendation that I think will be best for our country and best for preservation.
Farm workers and owners keeping a close eye on new legislation being proposed to help maintain an agricultural workforce. As we told you yesterday, the bill would give farm workers a path to legal status and citizenship, allowing undocumented farm workers who have worked in agriculture for at least 100 days in each of the previous 2 years to earn a blue card, which would then allow them to work legally. They would eventually be eligible for a green card or legal permanent residency, which opens the door to earning citizenship.
They tell me they can't find workers, that workers are scared, that they're afraid they're going to be picked up and deported, that they have disappeared, and they tell me that some of them are looking at developing operations on leased land in Mexico. That's not the answer.
Bayer announcing it will sell its Liberty and Liberty Link branded seeds business to gain antitrust approval for its acquisition of Monsanto. Reuters reporting the divestment of 2 global brands will account for the bulk of asset sales, which is needed to satisfy regulators looking at that $66 billion deal. The divestitures are also widely expected to be required by regulators in the U.S. and the European Union. Bayer CEO last month said he expects acquisition to be final by the end of this year. On the production front, USDA is expected to release its newest supply and demand report later today. That report will include the government's first official crop production and usage estimates for the 2017-18 marketing year. Now, those numbers generally include estimates based on trendline yields and expected planted acreage. While all eyes focus on new crop numbers, many farmers are still waiting on a price rally to unload old crop.
I think there's a fair amount of old crop yet left, right? I think there is. Most of the beans have probably been sold, but there's a fair amount of corn yet that's still in the country that hasn't been sold.
The I-80 Planting Tour, sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, combining the proven control of a new 2,4-D and glyphosate. Take control of tough weeds like never before.
USDA says Iowa's behind on planting progress with both corn and soybeans, but that's changing fast. In the last week, farmers putting in 20 to 25% of intended acreage thanks to improving weather. Betsy Gibbon is in eastern Iowa on the road for this week's I-80 Planting Tour.
Clinton, Mother Nature finally gave farmers in eastern Iowa a good window to plant, and producers here are taking advantage of it. 1 week ago, seed was being moved in eastern Iowa, everywhere but the ground.
We've just been cold and wet.
Waverly, Iowa farmer Mark Mummelthai was done planting corn and beans by May last year. A week ago, he didn't have a single seed in the soil.
We want to plant the three things. We want to plant to a 10-day forecast that looks favorable. We want to plant into good soil temperatures and good soil conditions. And we've had a really tough spring of getting those three in alignment.
Mummelthai says some farmers in eastern Iowa had a small window to plant in April. He wasn't one of them.
If we're in by May 10th and we get some good emergence weather, which it looks like we have some decent weather coming and get the crop going, I think we're going to be in fine shape.
It's a forecast that's going his way. A weekend full of wind and warm temperatures made a big difference. Mummelthai has planted 90% of his corn and half of his soybeans.
Yeah, no weekends off this week.
Riedlin, Iowa farmer Brian Pottabaum moved grain last week. He just didn't plant it.
It's on a price later contract, so since we can't put corn in the ground, we might as well take it to town.
He wasn't the only one. Pottabaum says farmers are hauling grain to the local elevator plant since they can't be in the fields.
Corn hit $3.50 around here, and I think that was a big trigger point for us in this area, so I kind of got a lot of guys excited. A lot of trailers came out of the shed.
1 week ago, we had 250 acres planted. He was not worried about being behind at that time.
The last few years we've been kind of spoiled, so we've been done usually by this time of the year. We've even had our beans in by now, so still growing up, Grandpa never used to start till Mother's Day, so I guess we're still ahead of schedule.
He made progress over the weekend too. Pottabaum is almost done with planting for the year. He says farmers around him got a lot accomplished over the course of a couple days. A week's time is making a big difference to planting progress in eastern Iowa.
I wouldn't get too concerned yet. It'll get done.
As farmers use the windows they have on the road to a profitable 2017. Reporting in eastern Iowa, I'm Betsy Gibbon.
All right, thanks, Betsy. Mummelthai says he has a straight 50-50 corn and soybean rotation, which he did not switch due to price. And Pottabaum is heavy corn. He feels it's easier to raise corn and get a larger yield. USDA says Minnesota farmers are 20 points behind average with corn planting, and they still can't catch a break with those spring storms. Mike Hoffman has some details. Mike?
Good morning, Clinton. Over in La Centre, Minnesota, Robert and Justin had to pack up the machinery and get out of the fields after another storm rolled through their area. They say the picture sums up their planting season perfectly. Wet days and not much time to do field work or to plant. They say they've been fortunate, though, to have about 4 to 5 good days in the field. Taking a break from planting, we snapped a photo of this calf along our planting tour travels. He's enjoying the nice sunshine for a change of pace for eastern Iowa as well as many other parts of the Midwest. Now, taking a look at the root zone moisture, you can see how things have dried down a little bit across most of the Corn Belt, but there's still some wet pockets. It is drying out more and more in Florida and some of the rest of the southeast, at least in that topsoil. We'll talk more about that and have your forecast coming up in a few minutes. But first, here are some hometown temps.
With market prices constantly changing, it's important to know where current prices stand. Get market prices delivered right to your mobile phone. Just text MARKETS8 to 31313 to get started.
When we come back, we'll check on the cotton complex, including planting progress and market direction. And later, these Wisconsin kids are getting a chance to reinvent breakfast. See what they served up today on In the Country.
Agday is powered by Ram Trucks, America's longest-lasting pickups.
In agribusiness, cattle seeing some profit taking and fighting to stay in the green. Let's see how markets close from the floor of the CME in Chicago.
Tons of volatility in the live cattle market here on Tuesday. As a matter of fact, the market opened the day sharply higher and then traded limit down at one point later in the day. So just a ton of volatility in a market that has seen a parabolic move higher here during the last few weeks. Moves like this in commodity markets don't happen very often. This is the kind of move that we see, once every 5 or 10 years in these commodity markets. So really an unprecedented situation. It was really just a few months ago that the market had talked about a wall of beef and a very negative fundamental situation, and that situation has changed very, very quickly here. Again, Joe Vaklovic from CME Group here in Chicago.
According to USDA, 21% of the cotton crop is now in the ground. That's slightly behind the 5-year average. And as more acres go in this season, Tyne Morgan joins us from the Agribusiness Desk on what to watch in markets.
Here now with Craig Van Dyke of Top Third. Craig, let's tackle this cotton market. I mean, we see this huge swing in cotton acres this year. You would think with that big of a swing in cotton acres, we would see just prices plummet, but we haven't. Is that totally a demand story?
We're talking about one side of the equation, and that's the expected production, which we also have not produced yet. Okay, yes, 12.2 million acres. I guess that might actually pick up a little bit with what we're seeing in the weather conditions in certain parts of the country. But we're already well ahead. We're well past the 100% mark of exports on cotton right now, and we still have 12, 13 weeks to go in the export season for cotton. So the demand has obviously carried us along here, and we've seen funds build a large, long position. We've been on a nice run for the past 16 to 18 months in the cotton market, and China holds 50% of the world's reserves, which are old. They need to replace those at some point.
But looking at these price levels today, are you fearful that there is quite a bit of downside risk in this market today?
I would say there is some risk here, downside market risk, yes, absolutely. And we saw back just a month ago when funds started to liquidate some of that length, we saw a sizable shift to the downside. But it's healthy to have small corrections in an uptrending market. If we keep demand at the pace we have, and we haven't seen any signs of that demand slowing up, and with China holding 50% of the world's reserves, to me, the cotton market could be a very explosive market in both directions moving into the end of the year. So we'll see what production does. Right now, I don't see any reason why sellers would be aggressive sellers at this current level, but as we start to move along in the production year, that might start to play a little bit more of a role, and we'll see if there's any sort of change in demand from China as far as them slowing the pace on cotton demand.
Yeah, China definitely one to watch. Thanks so much, Craig. Stay with us. We have much more Ag Day when we come back.
For a special report on the grain markets, call toll-free at 877-TT-HEDGE. That's 877-884-3343. Get the roots your crops need by getting Radiate first. Visit lovelandproducts.com/radiate. See your CPS dealer today.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman. Mike, if we look at the root zone moisture here, we can see how the middle of the country is really starting to dry out over the last week or so.
Yeah, after all that rain that they had, it's amazing how fast this root zone moisture does change from week to week. Because just last week, much of the Midwest here was in a fairly blue area, dark blue area, because it was so wet. But it is starting to become a little more normal. I'm sure some field work may be getting done in places, but it takes a while. It is drying out across the Dakotas, drying out from central Texas into the southeast again, where there is some lingering drought in the far southeast, but especially Florida, really starting to look dry, and southwestern portions of Arizona. Look at all the wet areas, though, continuing West Coast and especially the Pacific Northwest. Taking a look at the map this morning, you can see a double barrel area of low pressure kind of moving east across the plains. That'll produce some showers and thunderstorms, rain north of the front for the most part, where it's a little bit cooler than south of there. But just scattered thunderstorms starting to develop in the return flow of the Gulf of Mexico by this afternoon. As we head through tonight, you can see more showers and thunderstorms starting to form along the front in central Texas, where they could use a little bit of rain. Showers in along that and mainly north of that stationary front from the mid-Atlantic states into many parts of the Great Lakes and back into the Central Plains. Next storm system, very slow mover, but is coming into the Pacific Northwest with some more rain. Northern California getting some showers as well. And as we head through the day tomorrow, you can see that first area of low pressure offshore. Second one producing some decent areas of rain now. That's a little farther north than the computer models were showing previously. So it looks like it does become wet for the lower Great Lakes, parts of the Ohio Valley, back into the central Mississippi Valley as we head through the day tomorrow. There's a precipitation estimate over the past 24 hours, adding in the next 36. You can see most of it going right through the center of the country, right along the I-80 corridor, number one. Number two would be the I-70 corridor. And then you can see all the way over into the mid-Atlantic states as well. Take a look at snowfall estimates. We're almost ready to stop using this map, but we're still going to add a little bit to the higher elevations in the central and southern Rockies, as you can see there. Highs today, 80s all the way once again into parts of the middle Mississippi Valley, 60s and 70s for a change in the northern plains. The cool air finally being shoved eastward a little bit. Although it's still on the chilly side in New England, you can see with lows tonight back into the lower 40s. Highs tomorrow, more of the same, very warm middle of the country southward, and on the cool side, but not too bad farther north. There's the jet stream, 2 cutoff lows, one in the northeast, other one kind of slowly moving eastward. Kind of merges in with that next cutoff that forms off the northeast by early next week, and yet another one coming in out west. Still a very strange weather pattern. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. We'll head to Bakersfield, California. First of all, lots of sunshine and warm, high of 87 degrees. Huron, South Dakota, a mixture of sunshine and clouds and mild, high of 70. And Durham, North Carolina, variably cloudy, becoming warm with a high of 78 degrees.
Coming up, we'll look at the produce market, including avocado prices on the Packer TV, and later, follow these kids as they reinvent breakfast in Wisconsin.
Fast pace with design-matched transmissions for intuitive steering, perfect cut for a carpet-like finish, and sweet ride with a comfort-focused seat. Grasshopper mowers are committed to the cut.
It's the beginning of fresh fig harvest in California, and industry leaders expect a production bump. The California Fig Advisory Board is expecting a slight production increase from last year with both fresh and dried figs. Those numbers could be up roughly 500 to 600 tons of dried. That's thanks to more acres going into production and a better growing season in the state.
This year we've had adequate rainfall in California. That combined with the farming practices of our dedicated growers equals healthy trees, and healthy trees translates into excellent quality fruit.
Stockley says harvest should take off for fresh figs mid to late May. Dried fig harvest usually starts in August, even though you can buy the product year-round. She says California produces 100% of dried figs and 98% of fresh figs sold in the United States. Meanwhile, avocado prices continue to rise. That's according to the Packer. Prices now twice as high as they were a year ago, and with peak season in full swing, that's not expected to slow down. Sales folks say they expect prices to remain strong through June and July. Part of the reason, due to a smaller crop in California. It's an off-bearing year for trees, and growers expect about half of last year's crop. And there's also less volume coming out of Mexico. Still to come, the Super Bowl of breakfast. We'll meet some of this year's winners from Wisconsin after the break.
In the Country, sponsored by Kubota's full line of field-proven hay tools. Explore the full lineup at Kubota.com or visit your local Kubota dealer today.
Now, breakfast is one of my favorite meals. It's not always the most creative menu, but a group of students in Beloit, Wisconsin recently won a prize, a super prize, for their reinvention of breakfast. In this report from the Wisconsin Dairy News.
The student body at Hackett Elementary School in Beloit is enjoying a healthy breakfast, thanks in part to the Dairy Farm Families of Wisconsin and the Fuel Up to Play 60 program.
The Fuel Up to Play 60 team developed the Hackett Hero Breakfast Bowl, and then the entire school got to taste test and try that recipe as part of their breakfast program. So it was great to see the amount of kids that got to try it. Everyone was loving the recipe, and I saw a lot of empty cups at the end of breakfast.
Over 30 schools competed in the Breakfast Super Bowl Challenge, and Hackett Elementary was one of the 6 winning schools.
There was yogurt, granola, strawberries, blueberries, frozen yogurt.
The goal of the challenge was to create a healthy, balanced breakfast that kids would enjoy eating, and these students accomplished that task.
The fact that they can make a connection between if I eat something and I eat healthy, I'm going to feel better, I'm going to do better, I'm going to learn better. And so if they're making those connections, then that's what I'm aiming to do.
So the team got to share their winning breakfast recipe with their peers to get them ready for a day of learning.
Great chance for them to get their dairy products in. Each breakfast includes some sort of milk, cheese, or yogurt, along with the 5 food groups that can really help students fuel their day and really be better learners and start on the right note.
For the students in the Fuel Up to Play 60 program, it was a chance to do something special for their classmates.
It felt very good, and I was so happy, and I just felt like I was about to explode because how excited I was.
And that's Wisconsin Dairy News.
Looks pretty good. Nice job, kids. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. Start your day with us. For Mike Hoffman and Betsy Gibbon, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.
Agday is powered by Ram Trucks, America's longest-lasting pickups.